and the ones who are attending online. So this is the KTBYTE USA Computing Olympiad seminar, and I guess we should just go down the line and introduce ourselves. So, do you want to start, Sky?
So I'm Sky. I'm a senior at Acton Boxborough, and I've done USACO for 4 years, I think. Yeah, somewhere around there. And I placed in the gold division.
I'm Neil. I'm a freshman at Weston High School. I've been doing USACO for the past year or so, and I placed in the gold division.
Okay, I'm Jackson from Bedford High School, sophomore. I've been doing USACO for a year, pretty much, and I'm in gold division.
I'm Patrick. I'm a sophomore at Lexington High School. I've been doing USACO for a year. I'm in platinum division.
I'm Eric. I'm a senior at Phillips Academy. I've been doing USACO for about a year. I'm in silver.
I'm Seth from Lexington High School. I'm a senior, and I've been doing USACO for about a year, and I'm in silver.
All right. So I guess just for general clarification purposes, then would anyone here like to explain what exactly the USACO is and what are these divisions you guys are speaking of?
Okay, so USACO is a series of competitions throughout a school year, for high school students or lower to show their algorithmic ability to solve problems. During a contest, they're around 4 a year. You compete in the division you're in. There are 4 divisions: bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. Everyone starts in bronze division. During the first contest, you have an account, and if on one contest, one of the 4 during the year, you pass a division, then during the next contest, you can compete in the next division. And your divisions get saved from year to year, so if you make gold like in your sophomore year, you're still in gold beginning of junior year. During each contest, there are 3 questions in the division, and you have 4 hours, except for the last contest of the year, which is 5. Yeah. And basically, you get a prompt to solve, and they give you a set of input. You have to read the input, and then you have to figure out the algorithm to create an output. And you submit that code, and there are several test cases for each question. You'll get to see how many test cases you get, and which determines how many points you get.
All right, thank you. I guess one of the first things that people would like to know about is that you've already covered a little bit, but what is it exactly that you think makes USACO different from other competitions that you've done? And what is it that makes USACO different from other kinds of CS you've done before? So I guess
I'll start. So basically, I think the biggest difference with USACO is that, well, there's a few. First, that it's actually a lot harder than a lot of other competitions, like, for example, ACSL or other competitions like that. It's partly because it's online, so you get a lot more access to resources, but it's just in general a lot harder. So that's something to keep in mind when you're doing it. And the other big difference, I think, is that it's online, which is like completely online, and it's completely by yourself, whereas with other competitions, it's like ACSL again, you're working through your school with like written tests. USACO, you're completely by yourself at home, just for sitting at your computer for 4 hours straight. And so it's kind of a different skill set where you're getting tested on how much code specific to that, like one of those like 3 or 4 problems that you can actually generate in that 4-hour time span. Whereas with ACSL and other competitions like that, those generally test, in my opinion, a bit broader kind of computer science knowledge. And as a result, they're usually easier to do well on.
Yep, so USACO, you have 3 specific problems that you need to be solving. In other computer science competitions, I've had to go ahead and then give answers to a bunch of like overarching topics, but in USACO, I have to go ahead and figure out what topic they're addressing and then create an algorithm to go solve that. I also think that USACO gives you a lot more time because you're sitting at your computers for 4 or 5 hours straight, which is longer than you think that it's going to be. So you have a lot of time to go ahead and then encode the answers to these 3 problems. And then although that USACO is definitely much harder than other competitions that I have to do, you have to come up with algorithms that are quick enough to pass their test cases, yet still produce the right output and are accurate. In other competitions, you have to just go ahead and then there's only really like one right answer to a question. When in USACO, there are multiple ways to achieve a good answer to like a given problem.
So would you almost say that while a lot of other competitions are more knowledge-based, like how much have you experienced, how much do you know, USACO is more about problem solving and specific kinds of thinking?
Yeah, because USACO, the whole point of USACO is that since you're given those 3 problems, it tests your problem solving abilities. While in other competitions like ACSL, then they're just going to go ahead and ask you about different computer science like aspects that you only can get from experience and like learning these broader concepts of computer science.
I mean, partly as a result of that as well, you can get kind of lucky with how the questions are asked, right? So with USACO, if you have a really good knowledge of a few types of problems, and all of those problems show up in a certain competition, that means you're going to do well. And so, like on the other side of that, if you don't do well, if you don't know like some subsets of problems, like you have no idea what's happening with those problems, you're probably not going to do as well. So it's another just kind of aspect where it's more specific versus general.
So, thanks, Guy. One question that's come up is asking about the USACO to IOI pipeline. So, firstly, what exactly is the IOI, and how does that connect to USACO? Anyone here want to talk about that?
The IOI is the International Olympiad in Informatics. So the top 4 USACO participants in America, high schoolers or below, get to go to IOI and compete representing the USA team. In the past years, USA have consistently done really well, usually getting 4 gold medals or at least 3 gold. And yeah, the questions are generally a lot harder than USACO. Also, the way IOI is formatted, you only have to create the algorithm. You don't really have to focus, like part of the USACO, you have to take in input and read out output. And actually one thing that I know, the first barrier of doing USACO is actually knowing how to start the program in bronze. Most people don't know, and they'll try to like search it up and might have some difficulty of just like reading input and then shooting out output. On the USACO training pages, they have a pretty good example for C++ and Java. And if you just copy those and keep using those, you'll be fine. But a lot of people don't find that, so that's just for people who want to start.
So how are these top 4 people from the USACO selected?
In the Platinum division, every contest, I think the people who are in charge of USACO actually read the submissions of like the top scoring solutions, and they'll choose people from those submissions to go to the USACO camp. And the USACO camp is roughly the top 20 to 30 people, although the actual number differs per year. A portion of those people are actually competing for IOI, to go to IOI, and a portion of those people are for training. The portion that's going to IOI they're all at the camp for I think a week, and the portion that are going to IOI are like rigorously competing over there to see who the final top 4 are.
Alright, great, thank you. That was super informative. And just to answer one of the questions that came up in the thing is, the USACO is in fact the only way to get to the IOI. So you gotta make it through the divisions.
In America.
In America.
If you want to, you can go to another country, compete for another country. I know. So this year, one of the participants came from China because he didn't make the China team. So yeah, if you don't make the US team, maybe you can go somewhere else.
There's a bit of strategy involved.
Yeah, a little bit of strategy. And ironically, he did very well, so China missed out.
Alright, so I guess a bit more about personal experience. in doing the USACO, you guys have all been doing the USACO for a fairly long amount of time. So obviously you guys have all placed in pretty high divisions now, but what was it like when you first got started? Like, what were sort of the impressions you got from the USACO, and how well did you do, and what things did you like about it, or confused you, or you're like, oh, I really want to learn about this?
So when I first started with the USACO, I was a complete beginner, and as a result, like the boilerplate code, the code that you need to read in the inputs and give out the outputs, really confused me quite a lot. That was when I first started. I think that was one of the greatest barriers of entry to me, but after I got that down and discovered how to apply the algorithms using those data types, then it was much easier.
And also, I started after taking a class, so I didn't have any I took a class before I even attempted USACO, so I had a lot of prior knowledge as to how to start the file types and use data like that in order to start my algorithm, and so I did fairly well in my first competition, but I'm sure, first going into the class and learning about the algorithms, it was very confusing to figure out how I need to be treating this data that I've given in an input file and how I need to process it. It's very different from, as we talked about earlier, other competitions, or very different than anything you learn in standard computer science classes. So it's interesting to start.
I also took one of the classes, I think it was 91 with Shibong, but that definitely helped a lot. But after a while, you kind of develop like a sort of a liking to the problem, because a lot of them are themed around cows, and you get to be familiar with like Bessie and all these other cows. It's nice.
Sometimes you get too familiar. Well, so hearing about your experiences in starting, what would you guys say would be sort of the skill level or the age where people should start looking at USACO and getting into it?
I think it doesn't really matter what your age is, but I think if you've done programming and you're comfortable programming with a language, you can make it through bronze to silver. And if you have experience in certain algorithms, like BFS, flood fill, sweepline, then you can make it through. Should I go through maybe what I level? You might be
brief overview.
A brief overview of certain algorithms. So bronze is mainly testing your ability to think of bashy or almost greedy solutions and coding it. The main objective is to see, do you actually know the language? You know how to code in this language. Silver and gold, the questions usually are implemented. The way to solve them are implementations of one algorithm, one standard algorithm, or sometimes two in gold. And some common algorithms you'll see in silver will be binary search, flood fill, breadth first search, or depth first search. Gold, you'll see a lot of dynamic programming, 2D dynamic programming, sometimes 3D. And these algorithms, you might not know them at all right now. A year ago, these were just foreign words. But I learned a lot of these through KTBYTE class and other resources online. Although a lot of times the online resources will give difficult language. I know anytime you try to learn programming online, they'll just use language you'll just have never heard about. What are nodes and edges? Well, yeah. So yeah, this is kind of a brief overview.
What about platinum?
Platinum questions are insanely hard. The algorithms there's a large diverse group of algorithms they'll use, and each year they'll switch it up. And the last year, almost every contest had one algorithm called segment trees. So if you want to pass platinum, yeah, just no segment trees.
You gotta make it into IOI, Pat. Alright, I think another thing I wanted to ask was just sort of building off of what Pat was just talking about. What are the main ways you learned the things for the USACO, and were they mostly through classes here, or what did you guys do to prepare on your own time?
Most of my preparation came from classes that I took. I've taken CS91 and CS92, which CS91 is the preparation for bronze and silver when I took it. I believe is it silver now? Isn't there a class below it too? Yeah, CS90. But CS91 when I took it was a preparation for bronze and silver. So they taught mainly silver algorithms and also taught you how to like use your programming knowledge in order to generally solve a problem, which would help you in bronze. That helped me a lot. I took that class twice, I believe. No? I think I did. Definitely did. But,
Short summer.
anyway. It basically, the knowledge that I learned from that class helped me a lot when I was programming in the USACO competition. Like, if I hadn't taken the class, even if I had studied online, I definitely wouldn't have had like an idea of the tricks I need to be applying in order to like actually succeed in the test. And same goes for taking 92 and then attempting gold, which I have not passed. But it's like a lot of the things that I saw in gold, I recognized from class, and like some tricks, like little things that they put in to try to trip you up and maybe make your program take longer, able to recognize those things from examples in class. And basically, yeah, that's, yeah.
I mean, another way that I found was really useful was going through a lot of past USACO problems. So they have like a contest archive, and you can go through every single USACO contest they've had and all the problems. And you can try writing your own code, try simulating a contest scenario, and then getting it grade. For most of them you can get them graded. And so this was useful for me because like what Jackson was talking about, you get a lot of experience through just doing these problems over and over again, saying, oh, that looks like the one from December 2012 that had something about cows in space. And so that's kind of where a lot of my experience came from. And then slightly less useful for me was the USACO has their own kind of training site. There's a training tab. And so that one's more, I'd say it's less beginner friendly, honestly. It's more just kind of like a lot of similar problems to USACO. And I guess a good thing about them is that they do teach you specifically like this algorithm is how to solve this, or this algorithm is how to solve this, and they give you a lot of problems. But I didn't really do too many of those because I found the actual contest problems more useful.
I would actually like to say, for the training pages, I think the first three, there are like several chapters. I think the first three chapters are good for the current type of questions. After that, they're not really helpful. But definitely the current questions you can find on the USACO homepage, or like the main site, is the best resource you'll have for USACO. There are other resources you can use to like practice other like coding competitions in general, like Code Forces. You can do their questions as well, although their questions greatly differ from the type of question USACO have. It's good practice. Yeah.
And I think one thing that, for all of those people who are listening who would be interested in trying the USACO, we've been talking a lot about practicing on the previous contest questions to prepare. But I think one thing to keep in mind is there are like 4-ish contests per year, and just doing the questions contest to contest, even if you don't feel like you're qualified, I feel like that gives a lot of experience in solving them. Like, because I'm assuming most of you here didn't go straight from like bronze to plat in like with each contest being a success, right? You kind of need to grind and be like, oh, I failed that contest, but oh, let me learn that algorithm and fix it up for next contest, blah blah blah. Let's see, another question I wanted to bring up was, what kind of other CS did you do besides the USACO, and like sort of how connected do you think those were? Like, did you experience things in the USACO that you were able to solve using your like experience from other things, or did your doing the USACO increase your interest and then allow you to try more CS related things?
I mean, okay, so, does anyone else want to start? Okay, so, in terms of USACO, like, it's a very distinct kind of programming where it's completely competitive, so it's a lot more algorithmically focused. But I think it's really important to have a strong fundamental grasp of programming in general, just because there's, like, even if the algorithm itself is pretty simple, if you have no idea how to code it, you're not going to get anywhere. So I think definitely, like, having a really good base of like just knowing how to code was really useful, and so that opens up a lot of possibilities as well, because if you're able to code like with a lot of versatility, that means that you're also able to see usually you're able to see more like interesting solutions or better solutions, because you know that this is a possibility rather than dismissing something just because you have no idea how to code it. In terms of going the other way, I think a lot of algorithms in USACO do actually have practical applications. The most notable one for me would be with pathfinding, which shows up a decent amount, especially in I think silver, bronze, goldish. Well, it's most of them. But anyway, pathfinding algorithms show up quite a bit, and so for me, I was trying to build a kind of like navigation system for my high school. And so having the knowledge from USACO, like, oh, this is an algorithm I can use to easily pathfind, as long as I give it like this kind of graph, that I knew what I could do in that scenario to make this pathfinding application.
How would you guys compare the difficulty and the content of the USACO to other things like the AP Computer Science exam?
I would say that it's definitely much harder, because for the AP Computer Science,
I saw all the nods.
you don't really need to know any algorithms. The AP Computer Science nowadays is actually just testing if you know the Java language, which is a bit unfortunate. But yeah, that's how it is these days. To compare it to other types of competitions, I don't know how many people who are watching are familiar with math competitions, but I think a lot of people who have done math competitions may seek out other types of Olympiads, such as the Computer Science Olympiad. And I think the style of thinking is very similar, but I would say that USACO tries to test two skills mainly, like two broad category skills. One is algorithm finding, like turning the question into numbers, turning to numbers that you can understand, and then the other is implementation, turning those numbers into code. So yeah, and it, as per the implementation part, you can. A lot of people think like, oh, you'll have to like study a huge amount of time, spend a huge amount of time trying to learn a language for USACO, but the amount of syntax that you actually need to know for USACO is a lot smaller than probably other things like ACSL. You can go through pretty much. You can go through almost all questions just knowing for, if, while, priority queues, arrays.
Trees, sometimes.
I mean, on most trees, if people are not familiar with trees, but most trees in USACO also can just be implemented as an array, if you ever need to. Like certain algorithms that are trees. Yeah.
All right, thanks. Okay. The next question I wanted to ask you guys was sort of what would you say are some reasons people would want to do the USACO? Like things like, oh, the things they would learn as they are doing the competition. Maybe it's a way to measure their sort of progress and knowledge and problem-solving abilities. And then third is like, is there other like sort of real-world benefits to being able to say, oh, I got into gold and it means I know these things.
So like, there's a lot of benefits to doing USACO. One is you get to apply the things you've learned in class outside of class. Like you get to take the theoretical and put it into action, basically. And additionally, one thing that comes up a lot, especially when you're doing data processing or back-end programming, which is like essentially how servers for big companies such as Amazon, Google, Facebook, they process their data using a lot of these algorithms on the server side. And so if you become a computer scientist, or if you're planning to become a computer scientist, a lot of these algorithms are useful to really just know, so you'll know how to implement them. Maybe if you're doing a personal project, or if there's some other application that you can think of, they're just good to know in general as tools.
So one thing you'll notice as you like study for USACO or algorithm is that efficiency is everything, and the goal of USACO is always to make the most efficient algorithm. Most of the questions you can immediately see like a very slow method, like it's like maybe what you would immediately try to think of doing, like a slow way, but then it trains you to learn the fastest way to solve a problem, and that's like what Tess was talking about in the back end of servers. Google search algorithms, like internet's huge. There are so many websites, so how do they find it so quickly? If you go to Google search, they'll see like a million finds 0.01 seconds or something. And so like how do they do it so quickly? And that's because they have computer scientists who find the algorithms that are efficient to do so.
Yep. And when you're doing USACO, you also have to realize that half of the problem is being able to recognize what algorithm you need to know. So you can say, oh, I can recognize what a problem is actually asking for. I know the fastest way to go solve a problem. I know how to go ahead and then get rid of all the stuff that I don't need, and just find the shortest route to go ahead and do something. And I can find an efficient way to solve different kinds of problems out there.
Yeah, that's definitely like sort of a really satisfying thing to know and know how to do. In general, would you say doing the USACO and the process of learning all these things has sort of impacted your attitude toward computer science, or maybe your interest in computer science? Anyone want to talk about that?
It's definitely increased my interest towards computer science, because, I mean, every little green check mark that you get up against there it's really satisfying, just to get that little green check mark for each test case saying that, yeah, you got it right, you passed. Being able to solve computer science problems like in real time when I'm against the clock has also given me a little bit of experience in the field, and definitely piqued my interest by helping me to get experience with something that now I know that I like a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, adding on to that, it is a competition, so it is fun. And when you do get those problems under the time pressure, when you do advance to the next level, that's just a really great feeling. And then, if you have a problem in like a project you're making, it's like running too slowly and you can't figure out why. Maybe it's because you're not using those algorithms, and then you can think, well, I could actually make this faster if I use this algorithm that I was learning in class, and now your app or your program just runs faster because of it. Like I've had small examples of that. Various things I've tinkered with, games or things like that.
So would you say the USACO has really sort of boosted your confidence in your computer science ability? Would you say doing it has maybe destroyed your confidence in your CS ability at times? Was just like how did this impact you, the way you thought about your own journey in CS?
It definitely shows you like how much there is going on behind the scenes in programs. Like when you try when you try to read a problem, you'll be like, how in the world do you do this? Like how in the world do you do this fast? And then as you go on, you realize, wait, this question is just like that other question. It's almost the same thing. And then when you think like, how in the world do you do this question? It makes you think like, maybe I might never like get to the next division. I might never make it there. This question almost seems impossible. What does solution even mean? Because a lot of the USACO solutions, they're not readable. Like they use variable names that most people don't understand. And USACO solutions usually aren't meant to be readable, which is another difference from like real-world programming than USACO. USACO is always just getting the solution, but in the real life, you also want to make the code readable for other people to use. But of course, because you feel so bad when like maybe you're extremely confused about a question, it just makes it so much better when you actually get it right and later.
Done in the USACO at some point and explain it